The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to Beyond the Garden Gate. Today's visit takes us to the home of Cathy Kert, owner of Cathy Kert Interiors, where she'll show us how to create 2 autumn arrangements. First, a hydrangea wreath made from her own garden's cuttings, and then a tabletop Pinecone Topiary. Cathy also introduced us to her 2 dogs, who are a very unusual breed, and Tigger the Cat made his debut. So enjoy today's trip beyond the Garden Gate. Hello, I'm Linda Temporino, and today we're in Nashua, and we're visiting the garden of Cathy Kert. And you can see fall is coming around. We've got a little pumpkin here to keep me company and some lovely mums. Cathy's going to give us a demonstration on how to make wreaths out of dried hydrangeas. These are hydrangeas from her own garden. So let's take a walk around the corner and see what she's got in store for us. Well, we're over here in this cozy little corner where Cathy makes her miracles come true. Let me introduce, this is Cathy Kert. Thank you, Cathy, for joining us for this lovely episode.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're going to show us how to make one of these wreaths. First of all, tell me about the hydrangeas. Are they from your garden?
They are. I have 2 different hydrangea gardens, and I have a different variety of hydrangeas. Hydrangeas can be a little bit tricky, but what I like to do is when these have flowered, I will cut them and I hang up a clothesline in a garage or a barn space that I have, and I'll just use a clothespin and hang each one so it can dry.
Now, at what point do you pick them?
When you can start to pick them, actually we could walk over afterward and I can show you a fresh one and how to cut it and when to pick them. When the bloom just starts to get a little bit brown, that's when you're supposed to pick them. And these I brought up from the Cape, so some of them got a little bit smushed because I had to put them in a box. But if you're careful, you can really maintain the integrity and the shape of each one. But even when they're kind of misshapen, they're very pretty, I think, and you can pop them into your wreath.
Now, what color were these before they began to dry?
These were white with a little bit of a pink tinge, and then they were between a light pink and a green. My blues of the Nico Blue haven't been drying quite as nicely, but I've really just kind of aggressively been working with them the past year, so we'll see next year.
So, and what type of a base do you have here?
Well, you can use a variety of bases, but I like this twiggy base. You can get this at a variety of places. You can get them at A.C. Moore or Michael's. In New Hampshire, I like to get mine at Grennan's. When I'm in Boston, I use Jacobson's, which is open just to the trade. But I think it's got a very pretty willow, kind of an airy feeling, which I like, and I like things that kind of have a more open, organic feel. So this is one of my favorites.
And tell me, how do you adhere the hydrangea to the wreath itself?
Okay. Well, what I like to do, for one thing, when you're working with a natural material, things tend to drop. So I like to be outside where I can just drop things and feel comfortable and make a mess. So I wouldn't do this in my house. I just like to be outside where I'm not so worried about making a mess. So what I do with the twigs is I start them in a diagonal pattern. I've already done quite a few of these, but I just use the natural friction of the materials to kind of get it stuck in there. I don't do any permanent adhesive till I'm done my whole wreath, because that gives me a chance to look back. You've really got to put things, that's okay. You've really got to put it in.
Need a shorter stem, yeah.
Although I like to keep the stem long at this point just to get it really caught up into that nest of the twig, because with time and gravity and drying in the house, things will move. So if you've kind of got it looped into your twig, it's going to stay better.
Like intertwine it in the stem with the twigs.
Right. And if I take this one, this might give a better visual. So I'll just kind of take the leaves off with my fingers, start in a diagonal pattern, and kind of gently weave it in. So you could do, actually, if you wanted to do something very tight in the middle or out further, you know, you can really decide where you want to put your hydrangeas. So I'll do another one just below. See how I'm kind of weaving that in?
That's so easy.
It's really easy. And at the end, we can adhere it, but I want to work with the natural textures. So you know, I'm working together with it.
Now, what do you adhere with? The glue gun, or do you wire it?
With these, because they tend to be dropping, I will do some glue at the end, but I also wanted to show you some other materials you might have around your yard that you can embellish it with. These are just astilbe flowers that have gone by, and again, it depends on your decorating style, but I like asymmetry. So I started to play with this just with kind of this natural in and out pattern. Again, just using that same technique, working with a natural flow of the willow and the stems.
It's amazing how they just all stick in there.
Yeah, it's true. And you know, right now I think with design, kind of a monochromatic natural color scheme is popular. So this works very well with it, and later I can show you some ways to add color and contrast if that's what you prefer. But as we're talking, so you can just see, I'm just really very relaxed. I really like the way that is. That's why I don't want to glue gun it until I'm finished.
This way you can move around.
And I'm standing pretty closely, so what I'm going to do too is I'm going to put some things in where I think it looks pretty good, but then I'm going to stand back and really, you know, take a view in, because then you can see if you have like a little hole that you've missed, or something's lopsided, or like this to me now is looking a little too heavy. You know, you can really step back.
I think you could almost use a little hydrangea in here.
Okay.
Oh, we'll take that. That's good. Yeah. Yeah, because that's nice and full.
Yeah. But I think you're right. Why don't you stick another one behind it?
All right. Want to shorten the branch a little
I
bit?
wouldn't yet.
No?
Because you can always make it shorter, but you can't make it longer. So I don't worry about cleaning that up until we're really finished and adhering it in.
Is that setting it off balance?
I think it looks pretty from here.
Okay.
I like it.
All right.
Another material you can use, this is fresh, but it will dry. This is sedum. This is the autumn joy that so many of us have in our gardens in New Hampshire. And it changes its color. Mine's kind of a light pink. I noticed this morning walking around my neighborhood, it had gotten a little bit more of a rust tone in some of my neighbors' yards, so it's fun to see the changes. So with the sedum,
Oh, how pretty.
this is a nice way to have a contrast of color while you're still keeping that natural feeling. You know, it's still very organic. I'm just going to strip the leaves with my fingers.
And these will dry.
These will dry. And the nice thing about putting them in when they're fresh is that they'll keep their shape, so they're not getting...
So they're a little bit more flexible as well.
Well, that's a good point, Linda. They'll get moved, they won't get, whoops,
There we go.
smushed. Or see, if you drop one, it won't break. But, you know, the whole point of this is to have fun and kind of express your own style and to use, you know, all those materials that you grew yourself in your yard. It's very fun. So that shows how, you know, now we've got several colors. We've got the brown, we've got that nice celadon green, and then we've got that little bit of red. So that's a nice look for somebody who's looking for a little more color.
Well, these are very lovely, but what if you're design your decor in the house, you really want to add some color to the wreath?
Okay, that is a great question, Linda, and it's very easy to do. I, as a designer, have a lot of materials from past projects that I've worked on. And this is a Design Master product. You can buy this at any floral supply store. And I've had this for a long time. This is about $10. It's not inexpensive, but it lasts a very long time. This is a robin's egg blue. The key to this is to really shake it well. Now earlier, I sprayed this one pretty heavily, so it has kind of a two-tone. You can see the green underneath, and on this side, it's a little bit more variegated. This is the Hydrangea blue, which I thought was very pretty. It had kind of a shimmer.
Looks like the Nico blue, almost.
It does. And this, I did a very light spray. I know I keep saying this, but again, I prefer to really work outside because I don't want to be breathing in this material if I don't have to. And then you can make a mess and you don't have to worry about it. So Linda, if you could hold this.
All right.
This is a lilac color,
pretty.
which I haven't used in a long time, so I've really got to shake it. And the key to success of this too, it's like hairspray. You want to go, it's better to go light. Now I can see that I haven't really shaken this up enough.
It's more pink.
Right. Here we go. Now we're getting some color. So it's kind of a pinky lavender, but if you do it too heavily, it'll start to run.
And it'll clump, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'll clump too. This, it's very subtle. It's almost like a brown lilac, but I really like to go light and turn it and take your time and see how the flower's taking the color.
Wow.
So you can see it's
Very, very
it's
subtle.
very subtle, but it's
Yeah.
very pretty.
I mean, you could do pink and blue and all different colors.
Absolutely.
You could do a rainbow.
And this is nice too because it gives you a little, it helps to preserve the texture of the dried flower. You can see this is very, it's very breakable. And with the color, it's a little bit more durable.
Yeah, a little bit.
But if you're looking for keeping just this natural tone, there are a couple of different materials that you can use. One, you can just use hairspray and just spray it. And that's very nice too because it isn't tacky. It's something everybody has. And again, just less is more, just nice and light.
And that would prevent it from doing a lot of
It will help
dropping.
it from not dropping as much. It's not going to totally prevent it, but again, I would hang this in your house in a place that's preferably not right in bright sunlight because that will fade it. You know, away from pets and little children's fingers, and just hang it on a wall where you've got some nice airflow. And this one is actually getting fairly large, which I like, but you can make them smaller and all different sizes.
So now, when you're all finished,
Yes.
and then you get out the glue gun.
Right. So this is what I do. When you plug your glue gun in, one thing that I like to do too is use old tile samples to lay my glue gun on, because everybody forgets about it and then the phone rings and then you have this pile, you've got a hot mess of glue. So I like to use this because it's, you know, not going to cause a fire, and you can make a mess and bring it inside and out. I've already got my stems pretty well tangled in with the twigs, but I will just add some small bits of glue in the back. So I would just go around the wreath to secure everything when you're completely finished. This is a material that I buy at floral supply stores. It's a bark covered wire. It's expensive, but if you use it carefully, it lasts a very long time. I just use some cutters to cut off whatever length I want. And this is what I use to make a hanger for my wreath. The nice thing about this is it blends in so naturally. You can just hook it in. It's probably difficult to see because it's so natural. You twist it around itself, and you can just use a picture hanging mechanism on your wall. and hang your wreath. And it's nice because you can make it small so it's very tight to your wall, or you can make a bigger loop. But it just is camouflaged against the wreath. It doesn't damage your walls, and it's just a terrific material to use.
This has been very enjoyable, and but I see something over here in the garden. It looks like a little Pinecone Topiary. Can we
Yes.
walk over there and take a look
Sure.
at that? Okay.
All right, so when I was getting ready to do this little episode on wreath making, I was looking at all my piles of old stuff I have from other projects I've done. And I came across this basket of pine cones, which probably a lot of us have in our house. So I've got these pine cones. I thought, well, why not try to make a pinecone topiary? So I've got a pine cone. And I know too, a lot of people like to collect pine cones when they're traveling, so this is a nice way to use them. I'm going to take a piece of green floral wire it in the lower, probably 1/5 part of my pine cone. Try to tuck my wire in so it's not showing too much. Okay, and then in here in the topiary, I'm going to kind of tuck it in, and I'm going to use my green wire. Oh, here comes my cat who's helping me, Tigger, to wire this into my topiary form. So, you know, it takes a little bit of time and some patience. Also, if your hands are big or you have arthritic hands, it's nice too to just use a little pliers to help you reach into those small spaces. So once you go around, you'll have to use your imagination that this is finished. You can find a pot. I thought this urn might be pretty to finish it off, and we're still working on it. So again, with your imagination. I was thinking, you know, I don't really want to see those empty spaces, but I don't want it too dense. So I've used this material from the floral store. Now here's a hole you can see with the green form and the wire. So we really don't want to see that. So I'm going to take my scissors. Cut off a piece of this material. I'm going to use my pliers and just bend it in half. And I'm just going to tuck it right in here. Just wedge it in there so it's kind of popping out. Now that's one way to go. Another thing this season that's so popular is burlap. So another thing you could do, which I think would be pretty, would be to take your roll of burlap ribbon, bend it in half, just twist it again with your plier, and it depends on what your own personal style is. But I think too you could add, actually I might have cut that too short. So you can add, you know, some different pieces of burlap in here. But I think with some work, this is a lot of potential to be a pretty tabletop treatment. Well, I really like the way the burlap is working here because you've got the different shades of brown and the different textures and different scales. Each of the little pieces of the pine cone are about 1 inch long. Then you've got this tiny, thin, wiry texture of this natural material. And then we have this neat burlap. So I'm going to keep going because I'm liking the way that looks. I can kind of position the burlap the way I want. And I'm kind of liking the way this is looking. And I may even just like leave it free form till I finish the whole thing. And then I can go around when I'm finished and trim it the way I really want it to look. So the next question is, using your imagination, and this is finished, which you're going to see later, how do we cover this stem? Well, as my design clients know, I really like to use a lot of twigs and sticks in my designs. And when I'm out and about, like picking apples, I'll collect fallen apple branches. When I go to the Cape, when I walk, they have this beautiful moss on a lot of fallen branches. So over the course of the year, I collect branches on an ongoing basis that I use in my designs. So these are just some old pieces of branch that I've trimmed from my garden here when I'm pruning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually lift this out of my urn because I need a little bit more space to work with. I'm going to lay these pieces of twig down, and I'm going to just roughly, for demonstration's sake, and I'll clean this up a little bit more later, wrap it around my base. I've pre-cut a piece of my wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie this It's awkward, but you've just got to work with it. Anyway, so I'll play around until that looks a little bit better, but you get the gist. So I'm tying my twigs around my metal green topiary base. And with my tools, I'll go around and trim up my twigs and make them the right size and tidy this up. But then you're going to want to cover your wire. So I'm going to go back to using that same burlap that we have in the top. And I've got two different widths. I have the 1-inch width that we used, but I think I'm going to try the 2-inch. I think the scale is going to be prettier. So I'm going to stick this in there. Hope it stays still. Cut my burlap. Again, not too short. That's really the kiss of death. You just really want that extra length. And I'm going to wrap it around neatly. And I'm going to make a pretty knot. And when this is all tidied up, as you'll see later, there are some different things you can do here. I could do a seashell motif and glue gun a shell here from the summer. I could take an old brooch or a cameo that I have, that I've inherited, and put something like that there. You could take a Christmas ornament. You could also envision in here putting little round Christmas balls. And then that leads you to other things. You could do small little gourds. You could do orange kumquats from the grocery store that bring in those fall colors. But again, keep it to a small 1-inch scale and keeping it natural. So there are lots of, this is kind of just a basic design idea, and you can really create your own individual design that expresses your travels and things that you've collected over the holidays. This is a cameo from someone who's very special in my life that I inherited. She was born in 1905, and I like to incorporate personal items in all my design projects. When I work with a client, I really try to express their collections and their interests. So since this is for myself, I'm going to use something that means a lot to me. So I'm going to take this cameo and pin it right here into my burlap and attach it. And it's really special, and the colors are repeated in our topiary. We've got all those different shades of cream to mocha to chocolate brown. Another thing that's fun to do, a lot of people like to collect seashells. This is from an oyster collection I have. So next month is the Oyster Festival in Wellfleet, which I'm hoping to go to in Massachusetts. So this would be kind of a fun thing to make and stick in my powder room the weekend that we're having friends, and we're going to be going to the Oyster Festival. Just kind of a whimsical, fun, and still natural topiary. So I'm just tucking in the oyster shells, and again, you can glue gun them in to make them stay, but you can get the gist, and that gives it a beachy feeling. And you can imagine transitioning this to other shells that you might have collected up at the beach this summer. You can also do a nice little display down along the bottom, overlapping. You can keep them pretty dense, which looks fun, and go around in a circle, or you can just do a few here and there. But again, you can see how fun and interesting, you can make this basic topiary. And again, you could add little gourds instead of seashells. You could add berries. You could take bittersweet and wrap the stem. So you're really only limited to your own imagination and your own collections.
To cut a hydrangea, you will want to follow along the stem like this and cut just above the branches. Although for this demonstration, this is considered a bit short, you will most likely want them to be longer, which works best. So follow the stem down to the next set of leaves and cut there. Once you have cut all your hydrangeas, what you will do next is clip each stem to a clothespin and hang them on a line or a piece of wire. Make sure you hang them in a dry place, but be careful that they are not next to a heating vent or in the sun. Good airflow is important. Hang in a garage, a back hall, or a mudroom and leave them for about a week, so your flowers will just dry naturally. Then you're ready for the fun part, creating your own autumn arrangement.
These are our two dogs. This is Sadie, she's almost 11, and this is Lightning, who's 7, almost 8. And we got Sadie from a family in Rye, New York, who also had 4 kids when she was a puppy. And Lightning we got as a rescue about 3 years ago. They are a rare breed called the Italian Spinone, or the Spinone Italiano, and you see them on the dog show now. And they are known as a hunting dog, and I am not positive, but I think they were used a lot in World War II to seek out bombs. So I think a lot of them died. You didn't see as many. But they are known for their hunting and retrieval skills, birding, and they love New Hampshire and the Cape. They have like a wiry coat. It's not hair, but they love to go through the underbrush and wade in ponds and at the beach. And they're a great family dog. Everywhere I go, people ask me what kind of dog they are. They're Italian Spinones. And I know there's one in Amherst, New Hampshire, and if you have them, you tend to meet other people who have them, and they're just great family dogs, very affectionate. And I walk them just about every day, probably 3 to 5 miles, and then they behave. But they're also a little bit mischievous, and if you leave any food out, they will eat it. They've eaten whole batches of chocolate chip cookies that my daughter Sarah made for her track team, and they'll eat popovers, they'll eat a turkey. So you have to, and they love pizza, so you have to just be careful that your food's put away when they're around. But they're great dogs. Good girls, good girls. There you go. There you go.
Well, thank you, Cathy. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope all of our audience has learned a little something on what to do with all the little stuff hanging around their garden. You know, you could use acorns and pine cones and twigs and sticks and make something beautiful for your fall table. Thanks again for joining us. Hope to see you again soon. Bye now.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.